I mean, I'm not going to have, the man, the champ on and not take advantage. So
I'm rounding into form. That's for sure. As Dan saw last night.
I thought you did good last night. I mean, it was a tough room.
A hard draft.
It was, man. That sucked.
So I've got this board. Sorry, I hate showing the names, so I'm going to too late now, but try to squeal it up. So basically I'm in the 3 spot. I started with 3 running backs. This is the best ball tournament, the 125, 200K. And I started it with JT, Kamara, and Etienne.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about how when you do that, you come back in the 4th and the receivers are sketchy. You know what I mean? You're either starting with Gabe Davis, Jerry Jeudy. How do you feel about these guys? They told me which guy they prefer out of the guys listed there. Do you have a guy you like?
I'm still trying to. There's about 8 guys that I'm trying to figure out the right pecking order, and I'm struggling with it right now.
And it's in this range, right?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to mix it up, but I probably I'm pulling up my sheet here.
Theo, I had to pick his brain while you were gone. I couldn't help myself.
No, sorry about that. Sorry to be late.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
I mean, Gabe Davis is probably I prefer him to Jeudy and best ball because he'll have some big spike weeks probably.
How do you feel about Marquise?
I probably what I'm kind of trying to do right now is land those guys, whatever gives me the best chance to land 2 of them if I want to do that with my next 2 picks. And it's still kind of fluid, but right now my data shows that Marquise just barely goes ahead of Gabe Davis, and they're both big play guys. So I think there's a better chance you get Davis on the way back if you're looking to go wide. But
I see what you're saying. Yeah, just because of where they're going ADP wise. Yeah, valid point.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't get him, I mean,
it's not like I can differentiate between them that at this point myself very well. So I try to use that as a tiebreaker to,
Yeah, I'm Hollywood Brown here, JD.
All right.
Yeah. But between Hollywood, Gabe, DK Metcalf, the odds are one of them will probably be there on the way back.
You also do keep a potential stack option available with Marquise and Murray too, whereas Allen's gone.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, that's always a consideration. What stacks are available? All right, boys. Let's enough of me. Enough of this. Let's get this going because we got a monster one tonight, boys.
Go DiSTRiCT, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT DiSTRiCT, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. It's the and I always be trading. And I always be trading. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
What is up, Fantasyland? We're back in the district, and tonight we got a special one. I mean, guys, we're fresh off of back-to-back shows last night. You guys drafted a beauty in the Shark Tank. Maybe we'll address that later, but if you missed it, go check that out. Last night, 10 p.m., you guys drafted a monster draft with a bunch of sharks for a lot of money, $250,000. And before that, we went live with the Fantasy Mojo, Darren Armani. So go check that out yesterday, guys. 2 amazing shows. Tonight, we have an amazing show. we have the man, the legend. I want you guys to just stop for a second. Unless you're driving, just stop for a second. Close your eyes. Put the volume up just a little bit. Just a tiny bit. All right. I want you to understand this man. 24 full season national champion titles. FFPC main champ. NFFC prime 2-time champ. FFWC main. This man is a legend. He's the whale killer of all killer whales. He will eat the shark in your draft, and you hope he's not in your draft. He's Chad Schroeder. Welcome back, my friend.
Hey, good to be with you guys again.
Welcome, Chad. It's good to have you back in the district, man.
Yeah, it's can use a little break here. It's chaos is ensuing.
Getting ready for the crazy draft season, are you?
Yeah, it's coming fast and furious now.
2 tonight, Chad, or are you triple tapping it?
Since I was doing this, I decided to take it easy a little bit. I did 2 before, and I'm doing 2 in an hour.
So talk to us about, I know we've asked you this when you've been on before, and guys, go check out those past shows with Chad, because you're always learning something new from the best. What's your process? This is the time of year where you're really getting into it. Were you drafting prior to this? How does your off season kind of lay out?
My off season, I just keep up with the news a little bit on Twitter, but I'm not digging deep into it. I don't watch a bunch of college videos and stuff during draft, the real draft season and all that. And then I just kind of start grinding away August 1st and with a clear mind and go from there and try to do some small drafts and struggle my way through this until I hopefully get into form here sooner than later. But it's a work in progress for sure.
Did you hop in any best ball leagues, maybe when you're kind of taking your time away from the higher stakes leagues to kind of get your process going?
Yeah, I mean, before I did any
You're on the clock.
Oh,
Nice.
Sorry about that. That won't happen again. Slow down.
Those are excuses.
We all
Man.
got them going.
Gave me a heart attack. I thought I was missing a draft. Yeah, I did a bunch of underdogs. I've done 75 of those and a bunch of DraftKings, best balls, and then I did kind of those before I started getting into the redrafts. Aside from a few FFWC main events, and those are good preparation as well, good players, and they're very hard. So,
Yep.
And then when you first step into the waters, are you doing maybe 1 or 2 of these 350s a night, or are you just kind of diving all in?
I've been doing 2 or 3 at a time. Make sure all my systems in place. I'm using a little different method this year, so I don't have to cross off names on sheets. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to do that on all the sites. And so I spent a lot of time during the day tweaking things on the sites, but then it makes instead of crossing off names on a sheet, I know it's foolproof if my stuff's on there already. And then it was always chaotic when I'd be doing 4 or 5 at a time, and I'd miss a guy or 2 on one, and then you're looking to take him and he's gone, and then you start panicking, and then you get behind on the other ones. So this is much better. So I'll start ramping up to 3 or 4 or 5 at a time here pretty soon, and it should go pretty smoothly. I'm pretty optimistic with the tweaks I've made to the process. So
I'm going to say, I mean, I don't know how you can keep up with multiple drafts crossing off by hand. I mean, just keeping up with one draft and crossing off by hand is sometimes almost too much for me anyway. I don't know what your system is. I mean, early in the draft, it's easy, but when people start going all over the draft board and, you're trying to find, I
know
Jalen Williams or whatever, you're like, wait, where is he again?
That was my process for 5. Well, the whole time. That's what I've done.
Man.
And so this is much better. I actually have time to look at the draft boards a little bit, and see what's going on a little bit better. But maybe I should just go stick with the old way because it worked.
I think you're onto something. So are you putting in your own like customized draft list into each site so that you can just have that appearing in basically your queue as you're drafting?
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Yeah, that's nice. That's what I do, because then you can kind of toggle back and forth between that and whatever the site's ADP is, to see what most other people are looking at. So that's kind of a handy little feature. So that's one of the things that Theo and I did last night.
When
like
you
FFPC, you can actually, they have a cheat sheet feature even, so your cheat sheet's actually right there on the screen, and then you can just hit a button or click the player's name and it'll bring him right up to draft. So that's really slick. Billy Muzio did a good job getting that put together. He's made a lot of improvements over there with their functionality in his time there. And that software was in some ways the hardest to deal with during the draft in the past, but so it's a lot better now.
It looks awesome over there. Billy's been on the show a number of times. I'm actually splitting a team with Billy in a couple weeks in one of their mains, so I'm really excited about that. I had one question for you. Is you talked about this previously when you've been on the GOAT District? Some fantasy players that are high stakes, high volume guys like yourself are trying to track percentages of their exposure to the players they're drafting. It seems like that's like not something that's necessarily one of your big priorities. Are you hammering the same kind of late round guys this time of year? I know obviously your first round, second and third round exposure would probably change based on your draft slots, but do you have like these late round guys that you're really into right now, or does that change during your process during, like, let's say the rest of the month of August?
I do. I'm finding myself a little behind the curve with some of these guys, so I got to make some adjustments when I'm in a sharp room for sure, and not get so anal about making sure I'm getting them at exactly the right price point when it's in the 15th round. Who cares? So
yeah, no, for sure. And I wanted to also go back. Who were some of your biggest hits last year of players that really helped you, win championships and have great success? Were there certain draft picks that really stand out to you as guys you were really right on?
I had a very, very high rate of qualifying for playoffs last year. Best I ever had, probably easily. Things didn't go as well in the playoffs for me. I was a little light on Chase and Burrow, but I had a lot of Cup last year, and I don't know how I had a good year, really. I mean, I didn't have much Taylor, and I had a whole lot of Laviska Shenault. And so I don't know what all added up, but I think just goes back to team structures and not having weaknesses in your lineup too often. And then one guy on the free agent wire that really, a couple guys, Saquon Barkley, Booker really stepped in it's not real pretty watching him do it, but he was getting 15 points a game while Barkley's out. And then another guy, especially at FFPC, that really shored up my weak tight end teams. And then he fizzled in the playoffs, so that hurt me. But it was Dawson Knox. But he was really good in the league playoffs. He was really good those weeks. So he was really, really shored things up for me at tight end on a lot of teams.
You brought up Cooper Kupp. How do you look at like potential teammate situations where maybe there's two wide receivers going kind of close to one another in your process? Like this year, we kind of see the Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. We see Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. We see Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. And they're like close enough that you want to be right in those situations where it looks like, maybe one guy's going to be more impactful to us than others. How do you go about looking at teammate situations like that? Because I think was a big factor for a lot of people last year having success.
Yeah, it was. And to be honest, last year I was taking Woods ahead of Kupp. And I did that because that's generally how they came off the board. I didn't want to, if I made the decision to take Kupp every time there, I would have ended up with him every time. And I don't want to do that when I'm not sure. So the same thing applies here, but there's a big enough gaps between these teammates that you're mentioning that I, at this point, am not looking at them as though they're teammates, because I think there's enough gap in where they're going in the drafts. Allen and Williams are probably the closest. And I guess Sutton and Jeudy are pretty close too. But I mean, right now, I clearly take Keenan Allen and Sutton over Williams and Jeudy. But
and how about with potential messy running back situations? Are those situations you want to stay away from the way you draft, or are you like diving in when, potentially like last year we saw a Fournette and Ronald Jones going late enough, and they were both close enough to one another. We saw obviously the James Conner and Chase Edmonds were going a little later, like these sort of running back by committees that end up producing, potential fantasy goodness. How do you evaluate those? Or are you trying to stay away and looking for running backs that have more of a clear path?
I was wrong on about all those last year as well, and also wrong on Singletary and Moss. But I try to err to the one that I think's gonna at least be the pass catcher that maybe has a chance to roll into more. But those are tricky. I mean, I generally try to avoid them for the most part, but sometimes there's just a big hole in your board and they're just left behind, and you got to. And that's where having a lot of teams allows me to take some shots once in a while when they fall to an acceptable point. So,
where are you with stacking? And we talk about the receivers. Theo gave some examples, guys that are close. Do you ever get them on the same rosters? Do you stack? Do you look for stacks, or do you have a problem with it when you're building?
I don't really worry about it in redraft very much at all. I do try to use it as a tiebreaker when taking the quarterback, or if there's a particular couple wide receivers that I'm fond of later in the draft. I'll keep that in mind if I'm trying to decide which quarterback to take, if I can pair up something. I mean, I don't think it's critical to have a pairing and to win a shootout, but you weren't winning last year if you didn't have Burrow and Chase. So there's some years where that's going to happen. And the easiest way to stock points quickly is having a high-scoring wide receiver paired with his quarterback. So it makes sense. In contained leagues, it really doesn't matter very much at all. In the overall tournaments, the bigger the tournament, the more you probably should be looking at it. Football guys type tournament or whatnot, with that many teams, I think it should be looked at pretty hard. Obviously, in the big best ball tournaments, the way they work at the end, you need to be trying to stack some things up, but you also need to do it a smart way and not be reaching 2 rounds or something to do it necessarily. You want it to kind of flow reasonably normally, but you can bump them up a little bit. But if you start bumping up everybody too much just to stack, you're going to end up with kind of a mess probably.
You don't want to give away value.
Yeah.
Just to get there. We have some questions from the chat. guys, Theo, Dan, if you don't mind, I'll throw a couple on the screen.
No, go for it.
Sean here is asking specifically if there's any undervalued teams or offenses that you're targeting. I know there's some like trendy ones, Detroit, kind of the cheaper stacks, Houston. Are any of those offenses that you're looking to invest that maybe you find are undervalued right now, or any other ones?
I found myself in best balls having a lot of Houston stacks. It's easy to accomplish because Cooks is being left behind a lot to start with, and then Collins was a good price point, and Mills is at the end of the draft. So that's one that I found that was coming naturally. And the Jets are easy to do in best ball. I'm not so sure. You asked me about good offenses. I don't know. These are that, but they're easy to stack.
Overlooked for a reason, maybe.
Yeah. Sometimes, right? They are.
I think that the Vikings offense just kind of excites me. I think Cousins just goes too late, but I get it. Everybody has their starting quarterback by then, and then you're wanting to fill in your depth before you're going to take your quarterback. So he's just in that area, but I'm quite comfortable to have him as my QB1 if I get in a bind. And you don't need to just stack him with Justin Jefferson. It can happen during the season. You can stack him with Theo and Osborne and stuff like that. So, and Irv Smith, if you like him. So doesn't always have to be the alpha receiver with the quarterbacks as well. But.
So just to piggyback off of Sean's question and a little bit of what JD talked about, but pivoting it to a redraft sense. Dan and I had a conversation last night where maybe there's certain players that I like or Dan likes that are intriguing guys, but they are potentially in not great offenses. Would you ever try to have exposure to two players on the same team from an offense you might have question marks about? Like, for example, this year, Breece Hall sometimes lands in a spot where he's intriguing, and maybe we like Elijah Moore. But could you potentially do you really limit yourself by pairing two of those guys, a Drake London and a Kyle Pitts, that sort of situation?
I think that you are a little bit, but you're right on the cusp there of like if you're like your team gets in the race, right? It's just like a London with Pitts is going just late enough where there's scenarios where you don't have to play London in your lineup potentially in the race if you're worried about it and you know that you can't generate enough points in a bad passing offense. But I don't really worry about it as far as drafting them goes. I just looked at them as players on a sheet, and they're all everybody's in an order because of what they're expected to do. And then I kind of know who's got maybe a little more upside beyond that or some downside beyond that or not excitement beyond just their name. But if you start worrying about things like that too much, I find that you're just going to end up leaving value behind. And so I don't paint myself in a corner and say, oh, I have Hall, so Elijah Moore's out of play, or I have Pitts, London's out of play. I mean, things happen during the season. Guys get injured. Pitts gets hurt, then London could be a beast. So things happen, that you'd never know what's going to happen. So I don't worry about it too much. In best balls, I would say in best balls, if the quarterback's behind, like if the quarterback's gone, that you're going to be adding these multiple guys to a team and you don't have him, then I think it limits your upsides in best ball tournaments because you can only probably get one huge score, in week 17 out of that one guy or the other. So I don't like wasting too high. Like I don't like, it's a bad example because Burrow goes after Chase and and Higgins, but you get the point. Like I wouldn't like let's pretend that Burrow lives ahead of Chase or Higgins. This is really not making sense, but
No, I know.
I understand what you're saying. But
we
like Josh Allen, Gabe Davis, and
somebody
Stephon
explain
Diggs.
it better than I am.
You don't want to invest too much in the same offense, right? And
if the quarterback's already behind,
especially if you don't have the quarterback. If you're going in with the quarterback and you're trying to make that build, it makes more sense to you. But if you don't, you're risking it and you're capping your upside. Is basically what it's saying.
So like if you had Diggs and Josh Allen went to somebody else, you'd probably stay away from Gabe Davis.
there you go. That's a better example.
Way to put it.
Yeah.
See, that's why Dan's here with the flow, and he just knows how to make it flow. That's just what he does. So guys, smash the buttons, smash the like, smash the subscribe, show us the support. Guys, we're almost at 500. Help us get to 500 subs. We're like, I think 20 away. Share with your family, friends. Get your mom to subscribe, man. She doesn't need to necessarily watch, but get anyone in your family to subscribe. The girlfriend, the wife. Maybe she'll take a liking to Theo's new hairdo. You don't know, man. You never know about these things. So share the goodness. We're sharing the goodness tonight by having the best player on the planet in the house. And we got a question from Frank asking, and this may be a good piggyback to what we were just talking about. I hate how the questions cover your face, so I apologize, Chad. I'm not technical enough to kind of.
That'll get your subscribers up.
So Frank says, Chad, thanks so much for sharing your insight in tournament formats. How do you think about swinging for the fences on each pick versus players having a solid floor but limiting upside?
I don't really worry about either one too much. Some people go real crazy. I use the youth element as a tiebreaker in big tournaments. The very first FFWC main event team I did, it was my first draft of the year that was for money. And it was baptism by fire. And I come away with like every old guy you can imagine is what they were leaving me. And I kept taking them. So I just look back at the team at the end. It's just all these old guys. And it's probably not a team that's going to have enough energy to get something big accomplished. So you just want to be, you want to have at least some youth and upside, not just all veteran guys like the Robert Woods of the world. But I think that in certain builds, guys like that might be useful to give you sort of a steady hand, but you just can't have a bunch of steady hands.
Right.
We're pretty ageist here, right, guys? Like in most cases, we're getting pretty ageist. I find every year more and more.
Yeah, a little bit, but sprinkled in rather than just totally like you don't want your team marinated in it. You just want it. You want to
balance. Yeah.
You're continually bouncing between formats. How do you manage that? Do you like to try to draft, multiple FFPCs over a course of a few days and then kind of pivot over to NFFC? Or are you able to kind of do multiple formats in the same evening, and I guess the same day as well?
Or possibly even the same time for Chad.
Or the same time.
Oh yeah, I mean, there'll be times this draft season where I'll have leagues that are at least $2,000 going on at 5 different places at once. So I'm able to. My brain works a little differently than most, but I mean, it's not necessarily a good thing, but it allows me to do that at least without. And I understand. I've played so many teams over the years at these places that I know the format like the back of my hand, and then what the niches are or whatever of each one. So
it's like mind muscle connection almost for you at this point, like going FFWC with the 2 flexes or FFPC with a tight end premium, and you're just able to kind of switch over.
Just literally today, I was up in a couple different drafts at the same time earlier, and I was picking early in both of them. And so like, I'm not necessarily huge on Fournette, but there was one time it made sense to take him because of the format over an Evans or something. And in the other format, FFWC slow draft that you heard chime a little bit ago, that one was the other way around, it made more sense to take Evans because the receivers fly off there earlier. So just, you got to kind of know the landscape of what's going to be transpiring in the upcoming rounds of the draft. That really helps a lot and helps you break the ties. So.
You don't operate with a do not draft list like maybe some other people we know in the high stakes community, but are there situations you want to try to avoid, like based on the news coming out? Like, for example, if a player takes a knock, but there might not be any real information coming out, are you more likely to look at like that as maybe I'll get him a little bit cheaper, or is that something I'm going to avoid for a day or two till I have clarity?
I play enough teams, so it depends a little bit at this point of the season on what I'm playing. Like if I'm playing a football guys or RT championship, high upside type thing, I look at that as a buying opportunity on a guy if I don't have much of him at this point. And if I'm doing best balls, same thing. But if I was doing like a contained high dollar league, I would definitely let somebody else take on that risk and worry about it.
Your roster builds very pretty balanced out. Are you looking at different builds going in? Do you just kind of go with the flow, or do you have kind of a go-to or a favorite that you find yourself leaning towards when you're doing these, as you're starting to do these drafts more and more?
It depends on, again, the format, like the places where you can start up to 4 running backs. People like to draft running backs there for some reason, a lot more than the places where you have to start 3 wide receivers. So I try to own the players that make the most sense in the format that I'm owning them in. So I tend to perhaps cross it over a little bit, and I have maybe a elite wide receiver play sometimes at the places where you can play 4 running backs, and maybe slightly better running back play at the other places where you have to start 3 wide receivers. But I kind of just have a pecking order of each format based on my sheet, and I just kind of mentally know where the cutoffs are, where, okay, it's too big of a difference now. I'm not turning down this position, even though it's not going to set me up the best for later. I got to just bank the points.
We got a question from our boy Joey. Shout out to the chat, by the way. It's again 2 nights in a row. You guys are pumping. Joey, one of our faves. Dan, you read this question because I'm not really sure what the question is. Unfortunately, north of the border, I'm not allowed to draft in a lot of these sites you guys are talking about. Thank goodness for the FFPC and drafters, but NFFC, not so much right now. So Dan, what is Joey referring to with KDS?
Yeah, so Joey's asking what process you go by for setting your KDS in the NFFC. And what KDS is, for those who don't know it, is it's called the Kentucky Derby system, where you don't get randomized for your draft picks. You get randomized for what order you get to select your draft pick in. So you get to decide what priority you want to put on each pick. Like, you could say, okay, I want picks 1, 2, 3, or if I can't get those, I'll get 10, 11, 12, or if I can't get those, I'll get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or something like that. And then if the randomizer they ran for the, to figure out draft order came up number 4, 3 people would get their first priority before you. And then you're the 4th person, and whatever's left, whatever's highest on your list, that's what you get. Does that make sense, JD? Or not at all?
As long as you don't ask me to repeat it, it does.
Depends on how many beers you had.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's it.
You have a say in where you pick to an extent.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. It's like another twist, right? Another twist.
Exactly.
To answer the question, the best way to how I like to logically look at it, if that's assuming I don't forget to do them in the first place. I think the best way is get some current data from the contest you're playing in. So, like if you're doing an online championship tonight, you need to set immediately. Usually, like the last 3 days or something, or 2 days of online championship tournaments, and just get a layout of how the pecking order goes and what you're most likely to be facing if you're in the different spots, and then from there, and it allows you to potentially kind of map it out through like 3 rounds, like where the sweet spots are going to be. Assume you're using somewhat of some tiering systems.
Chad, I think we're losing you a bit. I don't know if you want to maybe hop out and come back right in. Is that is that on my end, guys, or is that
no, it's Chad. It's
okay.
Maybe just so clear up. Maybe in the time letting him clear up, Dan, you could pull up the draft board.
Yeah, let's do that.
We drafted against Chad last night. Dan and I were in the 101. It was a loaded draft. It was multiple former GOAT District guests. We had Nelson Sousa in this draft. We had Kyle Hillseam in this draft. We had Danny Mueller in this draft. And of course, Chad was also in this draft. Dan and I were drafting out of the one spot. Dan, maybe you could talk about kind of what we did to start out the draft, and then we could kind of pass it on to Chad to talk about his process.
Okay. Yeah. So out of the one slot, obviously we had a decision to make. Did we want McCaffrey or Taylor or even Jefferson? But Theo and I already had a Jefferson team, so we decided to go McCaffrey on this particular draft. And, I think a couple of our big decision points were when we came back around to the end of the second round. Since it's third round reversal, we're only getting one guy instead of two guys. So we had to decide between ETN and the other guy that we had in there as a potential pick was AJ Brown, who really almost made it back to us. But we knew there was probably no way that ETN was making it back to us. So that was kind of our pick there, which set us up with a double running back. And then that left us free to just sit and hammer wide receiver for a while, which, as you can see, we certainly did. We kind of took a little bit of a chance trying to push Trey Lance back a little bit. Unfortunately, we were able to do that. It was not clear at the 7-8 turn that whether he was going to make it back to the 9-10 or not. And he ended up doing that. And then after getting that and just kind of seeing the value in Dubes, especially since we had Lazard, so it just kind of gave us the double on that Green Bay stack. Then we had to start kind of hitting more running backs. And then after that, we just got kind of shafted on tight end, but that's the way it goes. But that's kind of what our strategy was. Chad, what did you think about this draft? What was your strategy going in? How did it work out? Just kind of give us a quick 2-minute summary of
this is a good thing to look at. Yeah, I wouldn't look at my team because that's not a good thing to look at. But it's a good example of what can occur if you do something wrong. And sometimes I get a little overconfident in my abilities to get out of the mess. But this is such a talented field that it wasn't the right league to probably do it. You should not be taking an early tight end and quarterback like I did here. It's just going to leave you a little bit too. You got to really thread the needle and hit on everything at wide receiver. But it was tough. I mean, like the exact 15 guys were gone that I was hoping something slipped through the cracks. And they didn't. And then it just seems like once one thing like that goes bad, things go off the rails and it never comes back on. There was certainly some sweet spots at the ends of the draft. I felt like where the value made it to, which often doesn't happen. And in my case, the value was just closing all night right before I picked. But so I was just doing the best I could. And I was able to get Gabe Davis to stack with Josh Allen. I was surprised Davis made it back around. I almost took Davis where I took Allen, but I figured if I one of those wides would make it back. If it wasn't him, I don't care. I would get a similar player. And then one thing that was really frustrating, I thought I was getting an okay price point on Schultz. And perhaps looking back, I should have taken one of those running backs that came off the board shortly after, before I picked again. I was gambling that one of them would make it back, and none of my preferred ones did. And then I see like Nelson at the end gets Goddard at the very end of the 8th round.
Like you would have preferred Pollard there, or
Well, it's going the other way.
Other way,
Pollard
yeah.
was
Yeah,
gone.
it's the reverse. Yeah, third round reversal.
Stevenson, Edmonds type guy, and Goddard would probably be better than Bob Woods and Schultz, looking back. So, and especially knowing that I already took the early quarterback, I should have known better than to try that. That was a dumb idea, and I paid for it.
When you do your draft reviews, kind of, Chad, are you also paying attention, like if in a contest like the OC, you might do, I don't even know how many entries, but you're going to do a number of entries in this OC. Are
Probably
you kind of
15.
paying attention to the 15, and then it's the rest is just up and
I'm going to limit it
times?
to 15 and all these smaller dollar ones, and then all of 40 prime times, 120 FFPC main events.
Will you be doing a number of the classics this year, even though there's no
yeah, I'll be doing
big
a
payout?
handful of those. Yeah.
Nice. Will you try to look at tendencies on? Will you try to look at tendencies on, like, who people are taking that you're going to be drafting against? Does that ever play into it when you're doing your board review?
Well, I don't ever do a board review unless it's a unique circumstance like this. I'm so damn happy to be moving on to the next task. I just close that draft board immediately.
blank canvas, right, Chad?
Yeah, I don't have time to. It's hard enough to do 300 drafts, let alone draft review 300 of them. Also, I kind of know what mistakes I made I kind of do it during the draft.
How many total that you're managing? 1912 wants to know that you'll be drafting. You think total?
300.
300
like managing
300 to 330 probably.
Apologies.
And then a bunch of best balls also.
Damn.
And Chad, when you're saying that number, how many would you say are closed leagues, like the NFFC Supers, the Diamonds, the FFPC Varsities, versus a national contest league?
Right.
Would you say it's you're
80,
trying to get in more
80
of those?
or so probably?
Yeah.
80 leagues ish probably would be my guess. And I don't play any of those contained leagues unless they're 1,000 or more. I don't want to get bogged down with low dollar contained leagues. So
What's kind of like your general strategy for a tournament versus a contained league? And I know not all the contained leagues have the same scoring. Like some are, more based on scoring, some win-loss plays into it. But what's kind of like, is there a certain player you might have more exposure to in a closed league versus a big tournament? Like you mentioned, you're less apt to do stacking in a closed league. Any other changes for closed leagues?
not really. I probably I think that a lot of times people make a mistake. My peers might, and I don't want to lump any particular person into this, but I think perhaps the mindset is in a tournament, we need to look all upside all the time. And in a cash league, we can look for more boring guys more often. Like it's a DFS game or something, and you're playing a 50-50 versus a GPP.
You're going more chalk, right? In the contained, whereas in the tournament, you're taking more flyers.
I tend to draft all my teams similarly. Because quite frankly, when I'm doing 5 or 6 at a time at points, I don't even know what the hell it is. Sometimes I'm just looking at who I have and who's available. And the way I look at it, you're not, I've won those overall contests that I've won at the hat trick of those main sites. It was far from the case where I had the best team in the tournament in at least 2 of the 4 that I won, So weird things can happen once the race starts. And if you're not in it, you're not going to win it. So I think you can get differentiation by other means than just by reaching upside guys all the time. Nobody knows who's going to go off in the playoffs. Old guys can score points too.
Chad, you haven't been drafting too much, so you're kind of fresh to this. Are there any guys that kind of stand out to you that you're surprised where they're going, maybe in the first 2 rounds? Or does it
the first 2 rounds?
Yeah, is there anybody who's looking like maybe the fantasy community is a little too bullish on them, or is there anybody that kind of stands out to you as a terrific value in the first 2 rounds?
Well, let me just look at this draft board that we got up here, so the only players that I'm very, very light on that went in the first couple rounds here are Kelsey, Andrews, and Debo.
I had a feeling Debo was going to be one of those.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the tight ends are just a personal preference. They're going to have to fall a little bit further than they usually do for me to be interested in picking them off. FFPC is a little bit different. I usually try to take my tight end at a point where I think all the tiers are closed off at the other positions. And then I will look to the tight end position at that point to try to see if it makes sense to jam one in, because I'm never going to particularly like when I have to take one over there. So you got to do it sometime. So, and you don't want to be ending up with the same late round guys every time, so that you're confident in. So you got to pick your spots for Kelsey and Andrews where you get them at a discount, and Pitts. I'm not real keen on Kittle and Waller at that position either, for what that's worth.
And maybe talk a little bit about Debo, because we've talked about him as a potential regression guy on the GOAT District before. Kind of what are your thoughts? Is it lightning not striking twice? Do you see his role in the offense changing? Is it a Lance issue? What's standing out to you, Chad, with Debo here?
The main thing is just the passing volume's not going to be there. So I'm out on HiGH and Kittle. They're going to have their moments, and he can. The thing is, he can hit big plays. But heck, that what's that young dude's name?
Danny Gray.
Danny Gray.
Who's to say he's not going to get him? And you can't be putting him in a redraft lineup. So it's just real hard when they're to waste a second round pick like that, in my opinion. When there's potential league winning running backs going around that time, oftentimes it's not quite happening as much anymore with Kamara and Javonte getting pushed forward, and Barkley certainly pushed forward now. But if, I don't know, I just would rather probably have Tyreek Hill or Evans or Pittman or something that I just believe in is more of a traditional wide receiver. And let's also not forget Debo has a long history getting hurt a lot. And the more running back he plays, the more likely that is to happen. And I just don't think there's going to be like a Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, that's not going to be those short, 2-point plays where you're getting catches for 10 yards, that you can count on. So I just see some games where it's going to be real frustrating to watch. Like, this is my second round pick, and boy, this is rough. But
Guys, if you're watching right now or you're listening after, tell us in the comments which guys you're avoiding in these first 2 rounds. Theo, I'm going to take it to 1912 because I really want to ask Chad about this. There's a couple factors here. We've seen this guy's name everywhere. I'm wondering, Chad, coming into this, the 3 kind of hot topics right now are Pickens out there in Pittsburgh, Dubs, and then Pacheco. Are you on these guys? Have you seen kind of this climb in ADP by the 3? And like, how do you approach these hype rookie players, this time of season? How do you differentiate guys that you want to hitch your wagon to and guys that are just, smoke?
So they'll I mean, my draft sheet's a sort of a very adjusted ADP list. Takes a lot of different factors into consideration, but they're going to have to fall a substantial amount for me to be interested. I mean, I can count on probably 2 fingers how many times these hype guys have worked out in the past since I've been playing.
So you're not going to FOMO into it?
No. Can you guys name many that have worked out in the past?
Yeah, we went through this yesterday. There's a few. I mean, that did not.
Yeah.
Curtis Patrick comped him to Orleans Darkwa, and that gave me a little bit of a pause.
Wow.
He had to go 6 pages into the RotoViz screener. I thought that was interesting.
That's pretty.
Chad, I do want to ask you. We're seeing it in the FFPC and the NFFC. It seems like there's like the 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds are straight yellow. In the NFFC, like last night, Dan, in our 3rd round, I believe it's 10 wide receivers go in the 3rd, and then we see 9 go in the 4th. Are there any players that kind of stand out to you as fantastic values in those 2 rounds, Chad, without getting into kind of your guys? Are there any
Can you
players
say
that stand
the
out
rounds again? Which rounds again?
So we can push it to the 5th, but really the 3rd and the 4th round.
4th. Okay.
3rd and 4th look like, I think there's a potential league winner in there, but I think it's got to be sorted out because they're all so bunched together.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm, as we talked a little bit before we came on, how I'm trying to do it is, that's one thing that I'm actually changing my pecking order at each site right now, because it's kind of weird how at different sites, different guys go off in different orders.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
So I actually changed my data for that. And right now I'm just trying to do whatever gives me the chance to land the most of them possible, because I think that the sweet spot's wide receiver in that territory for the most part. So
yeah, definitely. Are there any players you're seeing kind of going, after the 4th or 5th round, where you're just kind of wondering why is it that these guys are going this way? Why, what am I seeing that nobody else is seeing?
After the 4th or 5th round,
yeah,
not really. There's Cousins would be one, as we talked about.
right.
And I see here team 2 in that draft last night is leading. Let's see what else he accomplished here. Yeah, probably not going to like the Andrews pick, but he got Thielen to go with Cousins, which I like. The structure is pretty good if you have a Cousins team. I don't necessarily agree with some of the names that he took, but maybe not taking Andrews and then flipping one of those out for a tight end later and look pretty strong. That's the type of Cousins build you can do if you're not worried about that.
Could have taken Irvin later.
QB5 this year. He could be a QB5. He's got elite wide receiving core. So that's the guy that stands out, but I get why he goes where he goes, because he comes in that spot where everybody has their quarterback already. So if you want to do a few builds without and plan on getting him, I think it works Especially like NFFC, where it's a kind of a pass heavy format versus I feel like the Jalen Hurts of the world and Lance's of the world are a little bit devalued when it's 6 points a touchdown pass versus 4. But not that they're still not fine, but you know what I mean.
And then I would like to add that last year you talked about a couple of your late wide receiver options in the double-digit rounds. You talked about Jacoby Myers, and he ended up catching 83 passes. Are there any double-digit round wide receivers that you think drafters need to keep an eye on that maybe intrigue you, maybe a little bit more than some other drafters right now? I want to get your late round wide receiver, Chad, so I can draft him as well. Is what I'm asking you.
No, let's just get it right out there.
Well, we had
to be completely honest, I'll ask you.
I like the guys. I like the number 3 wide receivers that are an injury away from one of the top 2 guys getting hurt from being
KJ
a monster,
Osborne?
like Osborne, Palmer, those types of players. Boyd fits that mix. He goes a little earlier than I probably prefer to take him. And shots on the Chiefs if they drop a little bit. And VDS is getting paid pretty handsomely. You could do worse than Marvin Jones and Zay Jones, and if you're struggling a receiver and then drop the one that's not working out.
No, that's a couple good names you gave us.
Westbrook, Ekin from Tennessee is a sneaky one that nobody's talking about. I'm not a big believer in Burks, and I don't know how healthy Woods is. And watching the camp videos, the guys that are getting open the cleanest that I'm seeing are on the Titans are Westbrook and the rookie Phillips.
Yeah, the guy who's chasing around rabbits with a hammer.
But I just don't. I think a slot wide receivers and the Titans aren't a team that I want the slot wide receiver on, with double tight ends a lot and Henry pounding the ball. That just doesn't really. I want slot receivers on teams that are in the shotgun a lot. That's not Tennessee.
We've got to ask Chad the question we've asked every single guest this offseason.
And then he's got to go, Theo, after that.
Yeah,
we got to.
I'll get you out of here. So right now,
I have about 8 minutes or so.
Okay. Awesome. Right now, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase are 1, 2, 3 in almost every single draft, and in almost every single format. If you were to pick another wide receiver besides those 3 to finish as wide receiver 1 overall this year, who would it be? And you can give multiple names.
You mentioned Kupp, Jefferson, and Chase.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, this is kind of a chicken shit answer, but Diggs would be my next one. I mean,
that's the answer. That's the answer. I mean,
anybody further down the line that really intrigues you that you could see that maybe besides the Diggs, Lambs, Adams grouping, is there anybody that you think could do it from the next year?
Let's just for a second, just wonder what would happen if Taylor got hurt for the Colts, and all of a sudden they had to start throwing the ball to move the ball.
180 target, Michael Pittman.
Don't even.
I don't. But if Taylor doesn't get hurt, I don't love Pittman's upside much in the second.
It's going too high, no? Third round now. He's up there.
Yeah, I mean, but that would be one guy that I could see some scenarios unfolding where he could do it. That's a little down the list further, but
awesome. We've gotten a bunch of answers. Diggs has been mentioned many, many times, so that's perfectly acceptable. We've had a good run with that question.
Yeah, and just real quick before we get you out of here, Chad, how much attention are you paying to little news nuggets like we see Tom Brady still hasn't really said when he's coming back, and the coach is just kind of getting a little bit angry when people ask him about that. Is that something that means anything to you, or is that something nuggets like that? Do you pay attention to them or no?
Well, it just crossed my mind today. It just crossed my mind today, and I don't want to I can't predict anything, but I found myself drafting Evans a little bit, ahead of the Pittman, Higgins, and AJ Brown grouping. And I wonder if I need to start mixing that up a little bit more. I'm starting to get a little nervous that Brady might retire again abruptly. This thing looks to me like it's his wife's not happy with him about playing again, I don't think. And she's not happy that she's had to hold up her role has been much more than his as far as getting the kids to school and stuff all the time. And I think wasn't planning on him playing football this long. And so when he says it's a personal issue, I think it's a marriage issue. And he's the type of guy that's a confident man, that if he thinks it's the right decision, he'd say to hell with it tomorrow if he changes his mind.
This is why he's the best, guys. He's got a direct line to Brady's wife, Giselle, and he's getting all the dirt. Look at that. Look at this. Look at it. Worth watching the whole show just because of that tidbit right there.
I don't have a direct line, but I think it's starting to worry me a little bit that there's more to it than what it's not normal to go on a 2-week hiatus 3 weeks before the season.
Especially he's like an all-in kind of guy. You think he wants to be there this time of year,
Exactly. And working with different receivers, Julio and Gage, although they're all hurt. So
they all have hammies.
Yeah. So maybe that had something to do with it, that he thought that he could pull this off because he couldn't throw to them anyway. I don't know. But it's just something that crossed my mind today that we shouldn't be talking about it. And we spent too much time talking about it already.
Well, we could talk to you all night, Chad, and we appreciate the 62 that you gave us tonight. We always appreciate you joining us on the district. Remind the peeps where they can find you on Twitter, and wish you all the best of luck this season, man. I hope you crush it again this year.
All right, Chad SCH23 on Twitter. I'm not a very interesting tweeter, so. But
I beg to
you
differ,
guys have
but
a good season and enjoy the draft season, and hopefully stay.
Oh, you had a good one today. I forget now what it was. I'd have to look it up. But you had a good one today. I was looking at it.
Chad comes up with some pretty good ones from time to time, so it's always entertaining to watch.
Shout out to the chat. You guys are awesome, man. You guys have been with us 2 nights straight now, three shows straight. We're gonna keep bringing the goodness as we get towards the season. Get you guys ready to crush your leagues. Theo, what do we have coming up?
So Monday we'll have Pat Carrain of NBC Sports Edge coming into the district. And then we will have on, I believe it's Thursday evening, we'll have Tommy Libretti, last year's primetime and Silver Bullet champion, joining FFPC heavyweight Noah Riddell for our It's a Trap show, where we'll be sharing our fades this year. We'll go around the horn and we kind of give players we don't like at certain ranges of the draft. It's always a fun one in the district. So next week's going to be fire.
The Listener League, really quickly, working out details. We're probably doing the 35 Superflex 2. It's a 35 buy-in. I'm working out a situation right now so that those of you that have already sent in your information, you're part of it. Your entry will be covered. If you haven't and you want to send in, email us, goatdistrict@gmail.com, your username on FFPC. And if we still have room, we'll get you in. I'm pretty sure we were full for the one league, but if we get enough guys and we can start a second one, we'll get a second one going. So thanks for sending in your info, guys. And yeah, man, we'll see you guys out there in the trade rooms. We'll check you all later.
DiSTRiCT, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offers the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT DiSTRiCT, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's a... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.